never, ever, ever have to pay for sponsorship because it's employment you're being given. You should not pay to be given employment.
Hello, viewers. I want to welcome you to the first edition of the podcast series of the Migrant channel, a platform dedicated to promoting the ethos of inclusivity and diversity. This is going to be our first maiden edition, and on this edition, we're going to be having discussing a very interesting topic and having an immigration lawyer with us who will be discussing issues around immigration, issues affecting migrants in the UK, the US. Without wasting much of your time, let us introduce Solicitor Tito on the program here. Solicitor Tito, it's nice having you on the Migrant channel.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah. Immigration is really a very hot topic. A lot has happened in 2023,
Yes.
2024.
Yes.
As it looks, it seems there's been a battle or a contest of who could promote tougher policies between the conservatives and the Labour Party.
Yes.
Let's look at the United States of America and what Donald Trump has done there. 2025 started on a very, very tough note. You know, look at the other side of the border, the Mexicans, and the executive order that he initiated recently. It was really a shock. One of the news, the migrants are at the borders we are hit with it, and should we be expecting more of this in 2025? What do you think the landscape is going to be like in 2025?
Yes, it's very interesting that you should say this, but unfortunately, this is not it's not new. It's not something new. We see this cycle all the time. There's elections. If you look, for example, in the UK, there is always a race to the bottom when it comes to as far as immigration policy and toughness. So you would find that every politician is trying to show that they're going to be tough on immigration. So like what has happened with the Labour and the Conservatives. We saw a lot of towards the election, there was more tough measures, like, for example, dependents not allowed to come. And the same thing happens with America. America is being, Donald Trump got in with his policies, always build the wall, build the wall.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the countries are, the politicians are happy to chop your nose to spite the face, because obviously these migrants do contribute to the economy. They do contribute to this, especially like in Britain. You're saying we're having an aging population. We need more people to be able to keep the economy going. So I think hopefully things will settle down in 2025. There may be, especially in America, there may be quite a lot of movement in terms of immigration, because Donald Trump can be quite radical in terms of his views on immigration. But he doesn't have to prove anything to other people. For example, here in the UK, we have had Labour, and whereas the Conservative had made this big deal of trying to fight with the Reform Party on terms of immigration. We have seen a pause, I would say, in terms of the policies which were introduced were tough enough, but there are no new tougher measures being introduced. For example, the income threshold for the increase for income threshold for spouses, that has been frozen. So I'm hoping that we'll go back to some normalcy, but we'll wait and see.
Wait and see.
Yes.
No, I know you spoke about dependence, and that brings me back to the issues of dependence. In 2024, you realize the fact that there was a cut down, or the UK government initiated a policy where they stopped students from bringing in dependents.
Yes.
They stopped carers from bringing in dependents. Now, let us look at the financial side of it.
Yes.
If you look at the universities,
Yeah.
from what there was a 42% drop in applications in the UK. So if we look at the financial side of it, so the universities were affected, because if you look at from global perspective, the universities make a lot of money from the international students.
Yes.
As we know, some of the departments are majorly the international students are more in most of these departments. Now, do you think going forward there will be a bit of relaxation on the policies based on the pressure from the universities and other sectors that benefit financially? Do you think there'll be a bit of pressure?
Yeah, I think the best way to look at it is you have to look at the background as to why the universities have considered on international students.
Yeah.
This has been and was encouraged by the previous government because the government cut the funding on the universities at all. So if you cut the funding that you're going to provide to the university has to make the money somehow. Now they've got few options of which they can do. One of them is to say, well, we are not going to pay our lecturers the fair amount of what they would be. We've had that, lecturers' pay being frozen for quite a while, and we've had quite a few lecturers strikes because they're not, being paid what they deserve. The other option would be to rely on international students, which is what the government say. Look, okay, you can rely on the international students who pay 2-3 times the amount that the local residents do pay. And the failure to which there is also a third option, which the general public doesn't want. The third option has been increase the fees that the local students do pay. And we've seen a nominal increase on that fees so far. But if you are to remove the amount that the international students bring to the universities, it is inevitable. Either the government will need to fund it more, get more money from somewhere and fund it, or the international students the local students will need to pay more for that lectures. So I think the government is going to struggle now that the international students their applications are going down, because if you think about things like dependents and the postgraduate visa that where you come and study, you're given 2 years, that was brought in after the universities lobbied, said, look, we need to compete with other countries.
And let's not forget about the health surcharge, the amount the government makes from the charges. A lot of money.
Yes. And which goes directly to the NHS.
Yeah, to the NHS.
So it's on one hand, the government is saying, well, we don't want immigrants, so we're going to put all these barriers for them. But, hang on, but we do need them because they're the ones who are running our healthcare system. So it's a double-edged sword, which I think the government will have to balance in a proper way. Yes.
Yeah, you're correct about it. Now let's come back to the locals. There's been this and there's been this complaint about immigrants, and I feel like they underscore the impact immigrants make in communities. Now, I want to the locals talk about healthcare being overstretched, traffic increasing, the police have to work more now. The system is being burdened by the influx of immigrants in the society. Now, do you think the locals have a point? Do you think the point is valid?
I don't know. I think
I'm looking at the fact that they're concentrating more on, they're not they underscore the value or the importance or the impact immigrants make in the society.
I think we need to have an honest and a balanced discussion, which rarely happens, especially in the local media. We find like media to take sides and almost demonize, immigrants. But like you are saying, for example, what's the impact that it has on the healthcare system? Well, what's the impact that it would have if you remove the immigrants from the healthcare system? Would you actually have a healthcare system? So yes, it does have an impact, and yes, the increase in population does have some effects, but it's something which the government can't manage. The problem has been the government has been making knee-jerk reactions, policies, without thinking about the long-term effect. It needs to be like, for example, and I'll say this, for example, we had a big shortage of in the healthcare system. That's why there was a big shortage of the healthcare system after COVID and after Brexit. Normally, the healthcare system would rely on temporary workers coming from other European countries who come for temporary time. But there was a big shortage, and the government just all it did was allow healthcares from all other countries without any thinking forethought of the impact to say, okay, let's limit it, let's do it in a staggered manner to make sure that things go. But what I don't understand, for example, when you bring in a migrant, the employer has to pay a certain amount to the government, what's called a skills charge.
Yeah.
They need to pay that. And these migrants are coming, they're also working, they're paying taxes.
Yeah.
So where is this money going? It should be put back into making sure that there is enough support for everyone. The issue of the migrants who have come here to work and to pay taxes should not really be impacting the locals that badly if the government had a plan and that to make sure that they integrate properly and the facilities are expanded as necessary.
Yeah. But to be fair with the locals, I also think that we are only talking about documented migrants.
Yes.
If we look at the pressure illegal migrants also put on the system, you see that they have a reason to be upset. You know, they have a reason to be to grumble, to cry out. Crime rate is on the increase. You know, so maybe they do have a point. Don't you think so?
I don't. I actually don't agree with that because I think if you look at the percentage of the illegal immigrants who come on the boats, which has been on the media all the time, it's a very small percentage. It's less than 10%.
Very small percentage.
Yes, it's less than 10% of the migrants who come here.
Yeah.
Now, majority of the migrants who have come here actually come here either as students or as workers. They have all brought some money coming in to bring some money, and lots of people, as you may well know, if you're here on a visa, if you do any criminal offense, you'll be out.
True.
So it's a small minority, but the media concentrates on that small minority and blowing it out of proportion. And that happens a lot as we near towards election.
Yeah.
During election time, you always use the migrants as a scapegoat, regardless.
100%. Now, let's come back to what keeps immigrants here. Now, you and I know that for you to remain in this space, you need what we refer to as the certificate of sponsorship.
Yes.
But in recent times, especially from the migrant community, I realized that there's been an abuse. There's been cases of fraud, you know, and I'm trying to understand who is supposed to curtail some of these issues surrounding it. I'll give you an instance. Now, a young man was telling me recently that he bought his COS for about £15,000 coming from Nigeria. And when he paid for the COS, he put in his application, and the Home Office sent him a note and a decision telling him that it was the COS he bought was fake, and they gave him a 10-year ban. Yeah. And this is not just him alone. We've had series of these cases. There's a lot of scam.
Yeah.
You know, within people in the UK here, people selling this sponsorship, and people even coming over here not getting jobs. You know, but I want us to concentrate on the fraud, the scam. Whose business is it to curtail it? How do we ensure people do not fall prey to these fraudsters or these scammers?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yes, as a worker, you do need a sponsor who would issue what's called a certificate of sponsorship.
Yeah.
Now that when you're applying, because I do help people apply, I help employers apply for this license. When you're applying for that license, you have to justify to the Home Office why you're applying for that license is because you cannot find somebody to fill in a vacancy that's there.
Yeah.
Now, the issue of you being given a sponsorship and there is no work when you come here should never arise.
That's the problem.
Now, the other issue is the keyword you said, bought. You should never, ever, ever have to pay for sponsorship because it's employment you're being given. You should not pay to be given employment.
Yeah.
So the key thing to bear in mind, if you're having to pay for it, it's probably a fraud. There is an easy way to check whether that, for example, if you've been given a sponsorship, there's an easy way to check whether that sponsorship is genuine. And one of the key ways is to find out is go on the government website. There's a list of all the sponsors. They're listed there.
Yeah.
And the best thing is call them directly. Don't go through that party. And I've had a lot of this where you are given a license, sponsor license, what you think is a sponsor license, and you're dealing with the third party. When you then apply, it's refused, and it's because it's deception. They deemed it deception on your side. You're banned for 10 years. It turns out the person just went and found the details somewhere online, and then they did a fake whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you protect yourself? First of all, do not pay for the sponsorship certificate, because if you do, the likelihood is, even if it's genuine, you're being given genuine, the likelihood is that person is not just taking money. You're not the first one to give that person money, and you're definitely not going to be the last one.
Yeah.
So what has been happening at the moment has been, when you're applying for the license, for example, I'll give you an example, a small company, a small care company does domiciliary care. Needs 5 vacancies. After COVID, there was a big shortage. 5 vacancies they need. But in the process of recruiting those 5, they then find that, actually people started offering money. And they will then bring 30 people.
Yeah.
But there's still vacancy for 5. So what's going to happen to the other 25? Sooner or later, yes, they may get the visa, you come here, but sooner or later the Home Office will clock on it and decide, this is not genuine. They'll cancel the license, and they cancel the license. Everyone loses their job and their visa, including the 5 people who had a job.
Yeah.
So if your employer has charging you money, it's sooner or later your visa will be cancelled. So it's not even worth the money you paid for if you're gonna come and just work for 2 months and then it's gone. So I think it's been a failure on multiple sides. Yes, people have been naive and been duped without doing due diligence. But also the government has failed the people, because when you apply for a certificate of sponsorship, you have to go on the system, or the license system, and apply to the Home Office. Now, in the past, the Home Office have not questioned this small company, which when they apply, they say they only needed 5 people. All of a sudden, they have brought 150 people. Yeah. They should have questioned that.
They should have questioned it.
But they didn't. So they both have done. Now, with the current situation, the government has realized that. And now what the Home Office have done is, every time you apply for a certificate of sponsorship, they're doing like a mini review.
They check. Okay.
They check and they find out, are those people who you hired, are they actually working? And if they're not actually working as you promised, then they won't give you a new certificate of sponsorship, and they will in fact suspend your license. So it's not consolation for those who have already been due, but at least it's consolation for those coming later.
Well, that's refreshing to note, because it's really pathetic, when it's we see it happen. Immigrants come over for these cage jobs, and the next thing you hear that they do not have enough hours. They start sourcing for begging. And living in this place, you need to do something.
Yes.
You need to work. You need to be earning.
Yes.
Who's going to pay the bills?
Yes.
So I feel like there's a failure from someone. It's either the government is not doing their job well, rightly, or there's just a failure for someone. And something should be done to protect immigrants. And that brings me back to the next question. Now, as an immigrant, do immigrants have rights? And I know why I'm asking this question, because it's when an immigrant comes to a new town, they always want to be very, very careful.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they become prey to those locals or people who've been in the land for a long time.
Yes.
They don't want to step on toes, and they're taken advantage of.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that comes to bear is for example, in workplaces, Yeah, there was a story of a young man who said he had not been paid for some time, and he didn't know what to do. I just feel I want to know: do immigrants really have these rights? Do they have rights?
In theory, yes, they do have rights. Everyone has rights. Like, for example, you have rights to minimum wage, to be paid minimum
Yeah.
wage in this country. And when you come, you would have a contract of employment which says how many hours and how much you mean to be paid. So you can go to the employment tribunal and you can claim that. Again, I say in theory.
Yeah.
Now, in practice, those rights are very limited because if you come here under sponsorship of a certain company,
Yeah.
basically you only are allowed to work for that employer. Now, your visa is tied and your stay here is tied with that employer. So even if you take them, for example, you take them to the employment tribunal or report them to the police for, the fraud that they've done,
Yeah.
the most that you do is, yes, the police may prosecute them, but that does not help you with your visa because your visa, as soon as your visa is reported to the Home Office, they give you 60 days to leave the country or to find another sponsor. So, and that's where the problem is. A lot of these things, the fraud has gone on and it will continue going on because people cannot speak up.
Yeah.
If you speak up, you lose your visa.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's it.
I think what the government
They operate
really
in a system, an environment of fear.
Yes. And I think what the government really needs to do, and I think there's been a few cases of this, is when they find this kind of fraud, they shouldn't just say, okay, we're going to cancel the license and kick out the migrant who is the victim. They should actually prosecute those people for human trafficking.
Yeah.
Because it is human trafficking.
is human
If you bring someone in here and you don't have a job and you in the pretense of whatever, that is human trafficking.
is human
So they should go to prison for what they have done. But unfortunately, that doesn't help the migrant who have spent thousands of pounds, uplifted themselves, who are then now facing to go back home. So a lot of people are not able to speak up because the consequences of that would be you lose your visa.
Yeah, exactly.
You're back to square one.
Yeah, yeah. Let me take you back to the abuse, which I don't know how. If I feel is an abuse, because and that's for the landlords. You have a case of a student who comes into the country, has no credit history,
Yeah.
but a lot of these, for example, the landlords take advantage of these students, asking for 6 months rent, 1 year rent at ridiculous amounts. And to be very fair, even some of us who have been in this place will not even pay year rent.
Yes.
So are these not abuses of a sort?
Yes, well, you could look at it like that, but if you look at other countries as well, there are countries like in the Middle East, you pay rent in advance for 1 year or so. Now, this is not an area which is really controlled in terms of by law as such, because if you have bad credit history, that would happen as well. If you wanted to rent a house as a local today, you have bad credit, they will ask you for 6 months advance rent because the landlord is trying to protect his property and his interest. Okay. So the reason they ask that is not necessarily because they're migrants, it's because you don't have any credit history. And if you're coming from abroad, you have no credit history. So that happens not just, it happens a lot to students, even local students. So unless you can get a guarantor who is local, then you can say, okay, I've got somebody who's a guarantor who's going to guarantee that I'm going to keep up with the rent. Because otherwise, from the landlord perspective, it's like, okay, I've got this foreign national staying in my country. What happens if they get kicked out in 2 months' time and then they have trashed the house? I have no recourse. There's nowhere I can be able to find them. I'm not going to chase them to Nigeria. So, well, as I can see, it makes it difficult. But I think it's difficult. It's for everyone, not just the migrants, even British nationals, expatriates who say, for example, I live in Nigeria. When they come back here, they would face the same thing because you have no record to show that we can rely on you to pay what you have agreed on the payment.
Okay. So now, are there legal aids for migrants? And if they are, what are the eligible criteria?
Actually, the simplest answer is no. There is no legal aid whatsoever for migrants, other than in very exceptional cases where it deals with asylum matters or domestic violence. When it comes to somebody who's victim of domestic violence, there isn't any legal aid. So the whole purpose of the visas for immigration, almost 99% of all the visas will have a condition: no recourse to public fund. Legal aid is public fund. You would not be entitled to it because you don't have recourse to public funds. So until when you get settled status or indefinite leave to remain, as it's called, you have no recourse to public fund. There's no legal aid, which means you have to pay privately for anything that you do.
Now, what would you advise someone or a migrant who just comes into this country? Would you have would you have bodies or organization you will advise them to register with to get a bit of protection?
Yeah, it's. I think sometimes it's. I think every community has their own, groups and gatherings of people from similar. Like I'm from Kenya originally, so I'm part of the Kenyan group in the UK, and you register with the embassy. And I think having that connection, there's always somebody in there who knows something. Like for example, in our group, I know there's somebody who's a mortgage broker. I know there's a lawyer. I know there's a doctor. So you can piggyback on each other's, and you can get some guidance on those sides. But unfortunately, we don't really have like one group. I think it depends on which country you come from. Each country and the embassy, the efforts that they have to try and have the diaspora groups coming together.
So community is really important.
Very important.
So you will advise them to, when they get into the country, they should try and align themselves with the community that they're most they relate with and get a lot of help.
Yes.
That's good. Now, I'm going to be reading in some questions because when we talked about, when we promoted this particular series, which was the maiden edition, some few questions came in, which I'm going to be reading out for you. They demand answers. Now, the first question, and I think I touched on this a bit, is the lady said, I work as a direct support worker. Since November, my employer has refused to pay me. The excuse he keeps giving is that they are trying to complete said registration, but we are still working. What should I do?
Well, again, it goes to what we were saying earlier. You can't go to the employment tribunal because they should be paying you, and that's it's illegal what they're doing. They're not allowed to do that. You can go to the employment tribunal, and also they're not paying the minimum wage. They're not paying them. So there's a breach of the employment contract that they do have. So they can do whatever. The problem comes in is, yes, when you do that, I would say such a person should be looking for another sponsor. They should find another sponsor, somebody who they can be able to transfer their sponsorship to work for them, and then report this person, because once they report them, they go to the employment tribunal. We know they will automatically terminate their contract and report them to the Home Office. So they need to protect themselves, find another sponsor, find another job, and then pursue this person for the money that they are owed, and also report them to the Home Office, because that license would be revoked because of those practices are not acceptable.
Because it's quite shocking. I don't know why in the UK today people will work and not get paid. I'll go to the next question, and that's
because that's modern slavery, basically.
Yeah, that's modern day slavery.
Yeah, it is.
That's modern day slavery, and you're taking advantage of
it is a criminal
these
offense.
people. It is.
Yeah.
Now, I'll go to the next question, and this is also a lady. She said, my son of about 6 years complained he was bullied in school, and I have made complaints to the school, but the situation wasn't satisfactorily addressed, as the child still makes such complaints. What should I do?
I think if you have complained to the schools and you have documented it, it's something which you can take up with the local authorities. They are normally, you can report it. I think there's PCC, and they would take the matter further. So the school have to take it seriously in terms of the bullying. So you can report them to the local authority, whoever, under which borough they fall under. Okay. You can take the matter up.
Thank you so much. Now, there's another area of contention, and it happens to when migrants come in, there's this area of no recourse to public funds.
Yes.
And a lot of people are caught in the mix. What is public funds? For example, it was even recently I heard about this 15 hours hours for child care.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was telling me he was caught in between. He was confused on if school feeding was public funds and so. Can you enlighten us? What exactly is public funds?
Yeah, so public fund is where the government funds provide some sort of subsidies to the school. So, for example, if it's childcare, the government would be paying the nursery a certain amount of money instead of the parent paying the amount.
Yeah.
That is public fund. So most migrants are not entitled to public fund. Pretty much no public fund at all. 15 hours school share, that is public fund. And there's a qualification criteria, and the best thing to find out whether you qualify is when you apply, they will go through the criteria, and if you need to have one of you who's entitled to public fund. So say for like migrant, if you're a migrant here and maybe your husband is British or spouse is British, then your husband can apply for it even though you're on a visa yourself. But to answer your question, yes, most migrants who are here on a visa, they don't have recourse to public fund, and that includes child benefit, school meals and things like that. Because a lot of these things, like school meals, for example, free school meals, the eligibility criteria is that you must be receiving one of the benefits as well, like under universal credit or something like that. So that automatically disqualifies you because you don't have recourse to public fund.
Yeah. Yes. Now, when you were discussing, you made mention to the 90 days, which you are given by Home Office.
Yeah, 60 days.
60 days. Yes. Thank you for correcting me there. Now, there was this question from a lady. She, I think her COS, she was with a care organization, and her employment was terminated.
Yes.
When the employment was terminated, as usual, she was expecting the letter from Home Office giving her those 60 days.
Yes.
But the letter did not come.
Yes.
And she was caught in the mix. Does the 60 days count automatically?
No.
Or do we wait till the Home Office sends
It's a very good question, because I have that with a lot of my clients. Now, the 60 days letter starts from when the Home Office sends it to you. Most of the time it's unlikely. It's rare that the Home Office automatically sends. So first of all, the employer will need to inform the Home Office within 20 working days that this person is no longer working for them. Then the Home Office will then proceed to the next stage of curtailing that visa by sending the curtailment letter where it says you have 60 days. That does not happen automatically. There is a backlog, and sometimes it takes months. There is a person who I've had who for almost 2 years didn't get the letter. Now, there is a case of making sure that they have not sent the letter, because that's the other thing as well. Sometimes they will send the letter, and when they send the letter, they will send it to the last known address and email address. So if you used an agent, for example, when you made the first application from Nigeria, they send the letter to that agent. If you receive it or you didn't receive it, that's none of their problem. Their curtailment starts counting. And I've had a case where a nurse came to apply for the husband's visa for them to come as dependent. And then when we looked at the record, she has switched employment, but she had not applied for a new visa. So unbeknown to her, the Home Office sent a curtailment letter which went to her old address. She didn't know about it. So when we did the search, we found out actually the curtailment had already been served 6 months ago, and she was working illegally, in which case she had to go back home. So the date starts from when they received the letter, but from when they received the letter, wherever they sent it, according to their last known address.
Okay.
So if you've changed address, make sure you update your address. If you change your email, make sure you update your email.
Now, will you say from the period when this individual's employment is terminated,
Yes.
to the period when he gets the letter from the Home Office,
Yes.
would you say that period he's living illegally?
No, he's still living legally until when the Home Office curtails your visa. The 60 days, until the 60 days finish, you're still living here legally on the same visa that you came with. What that means essentially is you are not allowed to work for another employer until when you go. So what you should be doing really is, as soon as you've been terminated, or you know you're going to be terminated, you should be looking for another job. And then as soon as you found another job, switch your visa to start working with a new employer. Because, as I said, the visa will continue until it's curtailed, but the visa is still restricted for you to work for the previous employer.
That's a good one. You see, I'll give it. I think we're coming to the end of this particular session, and just give you the last question. What would you advise, or what common mistakes have you noticed in the profession that migrants make, and what would you advise those who are considering migrating?
Yes. I think the number one I would say is do not believe the hype. I know there is a hype that everything is green and rosy. The grass is always greener abroad. Yeah, and I know everyone is like, oh, I know there's that new the thing you coined in Nigeria, Japa.
Yeah, that's what's trending.
Yes, but do not just listen on what you see on social media, on Facebook, people taking pictures with nice neighbor's car or something like that. Because life is tough. Do your research.
Yeah.
Because what you may have there, you may be throwing away a very good career and a very good prospects just to come in here and live a very basic life. So do your research before you come. And as I said, make sure that the person who's giving you sponsorship is genuine.
Yeah.
When you come here, make sure you align yourself with the community, people who have been here ahead of you.
Yeah.
But seek the right advice. So I've had people who have come here, but they have sought legal advice from people who came here a long time ago, and they have then got the wrong advice and done things wrong. So make sure you always they always say, make sure you've got a good accountant, a good lawyer, and a good doctor.
Yes.
So make sure you do your research, and when you come here, make sure you align yourself and know how to integrate into the life here. And finally, I think one thing which we really need to bear in mind is you must have a plan B. Do not come and assume everything once I go, whatever, everything will work. Like as I said, you can come here, you've been given your visa, but then the license is cancelled in 2 months' time. What are you going to do? So have a plan B. Don't assume. Don't put all your eggs in one basket and assume life will be forever lovely. No.
Thank you so much for this. It's been a pleasure having you here. And I hope we're going to have you for more other episodes.
No, I'm very encouraged to see that there's a channel which is trying to get the word out for migrants from this perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Solicitor Tito. More and more episodes will be coming up your way. I want to encourage you to stay tuned to this channel, the Migrant channel. This is a channel where we amplify migrants' voices. Until the next episode, have yourself a lovely period. Thank you.